It has been over a month now that there has been no live racing. Tell me about the first step that was taken to help horsemen and women concerning the purse distribution for the remainder of the Dover Downs meet.
Well, it was done in two stages. The first stage was distributing the money for the days that had been drawn. Our last race day was March 16th, a Monday, but we'd drawn the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday program, although we hadn't cleared Thursday. So those were easy. What we did was we divided the money up equally amongst all the horses that were in to go that day, including also eligibles, because we just felt it was more equitable to do that. And the trainers were paid 5% and the drivers were paid 5% for the drives that they had on the board that had cleared. On the Thursday, the board hadn't cleared, so we just divided the money up equally amongst all the drivers who were named on a horse that day. The more difficult part was the second part, which was the 2 weeks of racing that we had left that had not been drawn. That was the trickier of the two. We wanted to distribute about $600,000 from each week, which was $1.2 million total, which was about what we were paying in purses weekly. I came up with an idea that we do it retroactively after having spoken to the Secretary of Agriculture, who had his the lawyers for the Racing Commission look at it, because the statute was very clear. It said it has to be used for purses. So we couldn't pay purses for races that hadn't been run, but we could pay purses for races that had been run. So what we did, once he gave me the okay on that, I spoke to my board of directors, laid it out for them at a board meeting. They approved it. Then I met with John Hensley and at Dover Downs, and John and I worked the numbers. He was very instrumental in getting the information, the data, because they have the data, and we did it on a spreadsheet. We looked at it. We figured out what it would be. What we did was we took the number of entities that participated during the 6-week period, the look-back period, which would have taken into consideration all of February and March. And we took those 6 weeks, and every entity that raced a horse during that 6 week was included. And there were 392 entities that raced during that time, had at least 2 starts. We figured if you only had 1 start, you may have been in from out of town for a stake race or a special event. So we took the 392 entities, divided it into the 600,000, which was actually 540,000, because we took 30,000 for drivers, 30,000 for trainers. So you divide it by the 540, came up with a figure. I think it was $1,379, and we multiplied the $1,379 times the average number of starts each one of those entities had per week during the 6-week period, and then that's how we paid them. You obviously, if you had more starts, you got more money, but it didn't matter if your horses won, finished second, third. It was all based on starts, which was the fair and equitable thing to do. And once we did that, we submitted it to the Secretary of Ag, who approved it, looked at it, and thought it was fair and equitable. And then we had to bring it before the Racing Commission, and by telephone we had a conference call because you couldn't have an actual meeting. And the Racing Commission asked some questions but felt comfortable, and they approved it. So once that was done, we distributed that in 2 separate payments. It was the same payment each week. One payment went out at the beginning of that following week, which was a Monday, and the end of that week. So people did get 2 checks, and trainers got checks, drivers got checks, and owners got checks. And all told, between the 11 days of racing that were canceled or not raced, we distributed about $1,750,000, which was a lot of money. Obviously, it helped. I got a lot of phone calls. A lot of directors got phone calls. People were very grateful and thankful. So it worked. And the thought process for doing it was we didn't think it made sense to sit on that money till November. If people were going to be in trouble now, they were going to need revenue now. So rather than let that money sit in the purse account, we said, let's use it now. Because it normally, under normal circumstances, would have been paid out, to the end of that meet. Now, we can't do the same thing with Harrington because you have to have money in the purse account when the meet starts. And obviously, purses are going to have to be adjusted to fit whatever the purse pool can afford. Horsemen have to realize that every day we've not raced since March 16th, and not only we not raced, but the casinos have been closed, we lose about $80,000 in revenue. That's about a $50,000 hit at Dover and about a $30,000 hit at Harrington. So right now we've lost about 35 days of racing, give or take. You could do the math. It's it's close to $3 million that we've lost, or maybe even a little more than $3 million, but it's in that range.
There are also a couple loans that our stables may be approved for. Can you elaborate on them?
Sure. Well, there's actually some federal loans that are available, and there's a state loan that's available. There's two federal loans. One is the PPP loan, which is a paycheck loan. It's a grant of 8 weeks. You don't have to pay it back. And then there is a second loan, which is an emergency loan, business loan to a small business. I have known or I've heard from people who have applied and have gotten the PPP loan. I haven't heard from any yet who's been approved for the EIDL loan, but that doesn't mean that they won't be approved. Then we have an additional loan here in Delaware, thanks to the governor and the Secretary of Agriculture. This was the loan I spoke about last time we were hoping to be included in. It was a loan that was designed for restaurant workers and restaurants, the hospitality industry, travel industry. We were included in that when it was expanded, and a Delaware trainer owner should be able to apply for that. That's a $10,000 up to $10,000 a month. 90 days, 9-month deferment on paying the loan back, and it's interest-free and with a 10-year term. So you have 10 years to pay it back. I do know that particular loan, there have been a couple of minor glitches. One, you do not need a business license. Horsemen are exempt from having a business license because we pay a gross receipts tax. So you just use your harness racing license number. And the second thing is the code is 7112. That's the code to get the that you have to put down. It's called it's like an IRS code, an industrial code, and you should file it based on your Schedule C. And if you do that, you should be able to get that loan also.
Is there any other avenue of help for horsemen and women that you can discuss?
Actually, there is some good news in that regard. The Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor has approved unemployment checks for independent contractors and self-employed people. The issue has been that most of the Department of Labor, State Department of Labor agencies don't have or didn't have the software that was compatible. So they're in the process of doing that now. And Delaware's in the process of doing that now. And that should take, this came out about 10 days ago, and they thought it would take 3 to 6 weeks. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks that will come to fruition. That will allow people to apply for work for a unemployment check based on their tax returns that were filed as either self-employed or independent contractors. So that's good. That could be a real bonus for people, and it would be much easier and quicker to get, I would think, because unemployment, you usually sign up for it, and usually you get your first check in a week or 10 days, and then they come regularly. So I think horsemen need to look into that. We've posted some stuff on our website the Delaware SOA website that explains that.
The question on everyone's mind is, when will racing start again?
I get about a dozen calls a day here at the office asking that question, or amongst other questions. That's usually one of the questions that they ask. I've had several conversations with both Dover Downs and Harrington, even though we're not racing at Dover Downs anymore. Whatever is decided is going to impact both venues. I've spoken with the Secretary of Agriculture. I haven't spoken with the governor directly, but the Secretary of Agriculture and Secretary of Finance I've spoken with, and they're both conduits, and have close contact with the governor. Best case scenario, I think, or I won't even say best case, I'm saying realistic. I think we could be up and racing as early as the 1st of June, thereabouts. And the reason I say that, we are currently at peak, or the state expects us to peak these last few days, these next couple of days. And if that happens, then we should start to go into decline. You need a 2-week period of decline and then a total 2-week period of the leveling off. And then under the federal guideline, you're eligible for what I guess they call phase 1 to start opening up some businesses. So I do think that we're getting very close to that. I heard the governor from Connecticut speak this morning on MSN Squawk Box. I just happened to be watching it early this morning. And he's one of the 7 governors, along with Governor Carney and the governor of New Jersey and the governor of Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, etc., who have formed some sort of a coalition so that they're all sharing information, which makes sense. And he was fairly certain that if everything works the way it was going for Connecticut, he was expecting that they could start opening the state on May 20th, which, again, I'm sure is the same time frame that they're looking at in these other states. Now, that could vary by a week or two, but, I think June 1st could be realistic. Again, it's a fluid situation. Things can change quickly. There could, be a spike, I guess, or something else that surfaces. But if everything plays out the way it looks and has so far, I do think we could be back racing as early as June. Possibly the very end of May, I guess, is a possibility, but I would think June is probably realistic. Worst case scenario, we have a spike of some sort, or something changes in the protocols, the way this thing is done, and I can't even imagine when we would be back then. It could be late June, could be July, who knows. But it's important that the state get it right, because I know people are pent up. I know people want to get out there and they want to start racing, and a lot of people are saying, and you're seeing demonstrations all over the country, let us go back, let us go back. If we don't do it right and we have a relapse, it could be a heck of a lot worse the second time and take a heck of a lot longer, and that would be absolutely the worst thing we can do and be very detrimental. I think the governor's done a hell of a good job. Delaware, the numbers are low in comparison to other states. The number of deaths is quite low, and I think most Delawareans are doing what the governor's asking them to do. They're social distancing, they're using masks, they're washing their hands, using sanitizers, and I think it shows. So the state's flattening of the curve definitely has happened, and I give credit to the governor for that. But I'm sure he wants to get everybody back to work as fast as possible, because it's going to be driving him as crazy as it's driving everybody else. So, I do think, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, you're starting to see glimmers of light.
Are you still available in the DSOA office for questions and concerns from our racing community?
The office is open 8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday. Some Friday afternoons, if I've got something to do, I might duck out a little early because it tends to be a little quiet. But there's an answering machine, so you could leave a message and I'll get back to you. But between 8:30 and 4:30, we're here. You can call any questions you have, any information you need, or anything we can do. That's what we're here for. I have my staff working intermittently here in the office and from home. With computers today, I can scan things in and send it and get it done, and they're able to make calls and do what has to be done. So we're still completely operational because, insurance still goes on, membership still goes on. We still have to continue to pay the bills of the association. So we have to be here. I've just chosen to do it this way. I didn't think it was necessary that we all three be in the office all the time. Generally, the girls are in 1 or 2 days a week each, and the rest of the time they're working from home. So we have everything covered, and I ask people not to hesitate. I prefer that if a person does wish to speak with me, they do it by telephone as opposed to showing up at the office. Some people still show up at the office to make a insurance payment or a membership payment. I prefer they do that by mail. It's just better for everyone if we continue to practice the social distancing. But obviously, if someone shows up, we're gonna accommodate them. But people call, and when they ask, I tell them I prefer you mail it, and they say that's fine, and they'll drop it in the mail. So we're trying to maintain as much of a normal office as possible. It's important, I think, for horsemen to know that this is going to end, and we're going to get back to racing, and we're here, to do it. Speaking about the getting back and returning to racing, there's going to be protocols, I'm sure, mandates that the state is going to want. And a lot of people have asked me, do we have a plan so that when we can go back, we will go back to able to go back to racing? And it's hard to have a specific plan, but we do have, what I would call broad stroke plans. Some of the things that would have to be done. We don't know what the state's going to mandate, and until the state does mandate and say, okay, you can open, but this is what you're going to have to do, we can't figure out what it is we're going to have to do until we hear that. Now, once we are told what we have to do, then we'll sit down with the Racing Commission and Harrington Raceway to make it work, And some of the things that are possibilities that I've heard are, will we be able to race without the casino open? Yes, I don't think the casino has to open before we open, but I don't imagine there's going to be a whole lot of difference in the two. We would get up probably first, and then the casino probably shortly thereafter. And we need the casinos to open because that generates revenue for us. We have money in the purse account that we can race for a while, but if we don't continue to replenish that, we're going to run out of money. So it's important that the casinos also get up. But no, we do not both have to come up at the same time. So if people think that we have to, that's not to my understanding. Also, I don't know if they're going to require that we have fewer races in the paddock, which means we race fewer races at night. If you have to have one horse in each stall, or if you have to have a horse in every other stall. When you ship the horse to the paddock, if you're going to have to come with only one person in the truck, or two people in the truck, or less, or more. If they're going to allow people to bring a horse in from out of state. Right now, if you come in from out of state into Delaware, there's a 14-day quarantine. You're supposed to self-quarantine for 14 days. So these are all things that the state will mandate, and then we'll make adjustments for. And we'll make it work. Horsemen, I'm sure, will be cooperative. They want to get back to racing, but we also have to make sure that whatever it is we have to do, it fits, it works, that you can still put on a race program. The fluidity is there. Everybody can get their horses raced. It can go on in an orderly fashion, so we can put a good product on the racetrack, for the public, even though there won't be people in the stands, I imagine, so that we can sell it in the simulcast market. We'll get through this. We're probably more than halfway. There is light at the end of the tunnel if everything goes correct from here on out, as the state model suggests. So keep your chin up. The weather's getting nice. I know people are going crazy being at home. We're not used to being at home, especially horse people. They're used to getting up early, working, training, getting their horses ready, take them to the track, race, and get home at night. So I'm sure it's difficult sitting at home for extended periods of time when it is not something you're used to. But take advantage of it now. Rest up, because once we start to race, we'll get hopefully back to the way things were, even if it takes a little while.